Hello everyone, welcome. I'm Robert, and today I want to discuss Behold Rome. This is one of the latest in-hand games by Joe Clipful, and as you might know, I'm a huge fan of Dragons of Etchinstone, which I've discussed many times in my channel. So I definitely had an interest in this when he started sharing his development of it in a Board Game Geek thread. So his inspiration for this is the Imperium system, okay? And I'm also a huge fan of the Imperium system. So I received these from the crowd sale from the Game Crafter, and this is the deluxe edition. So first I want to give you a bit of an overview of how this plays, okay? So this is an 18 card game, just like other minimalistic games by Joe Clipful, but with the deluxe edition, on top of the 18 cards, there's a couple pretty useful cards that are included. So for example, in addition to the 18 cards that make up the deck, there's also a separate civilization card, age card, and regions card, as well as game save cards, okay, which I'll explain later. But in this game, you'll shuffle your 18 starting cards, and you'll make sure that they're in their starting level, okay? Each card here has 4 levels, much like in Mage Knight. And then after you do that, you'll pick a civilization to go up against, and you'll start in the monarchy state of your empire, okay? And then on age 1, round 1, with the round tracker card here, okay? So then, yeah, you'll shuffle, and then you'll start with a hand of 5. So I did figure out a way to play this on a table, okay, which is much preferred for me. But of course, you can play this entirely in your hand. In that case, you would, just have your hand, your 5 cards hand on one hand, and then your deck in the other, and you would, you would just handle it like that. But I prefer putting my hand of cards on the table. And as usual, you need to be very mindful if you're gonna do it this way. You need to be very mindful of the orientation of the cards. But the turn-to-turn gameplay is as follows. So you need to try to score higher than the rival civilization, and to do that, you're gonna improve your cards as you go, and also conquer locations, okay? So there's regions which you can control up to 4 of maximum, and they'll give you some scoring at the end. Each card has some scoring condition as well, okay? Some of them just give you straight up points, and then there's some conditional victory point conditions, okay? If you improved a certain card up to a certain state, they'll give you those victory point conditions, right? Yeah, it's basically a victory point race, all right? But the turn-to-turn gameplay is very interesting because you are trying to, just like in Dragons of Etchinstone, you're trying to, every time you go through your deck, okay, you're trying to do as much as possible, all right? So you're going to be storing resources just like in Palm Island, which this is a pretty, this is one of the major differences between this and Dragons of Etchinstone, is that you're going to be storing resources, okay? And there's 2 types of resources. There's materials, and then there's population or people, okay? People are used for the conquer action, all right, to conquer locations, okay? And the way a turn goes is you play a card, right? So you have a hand of 5 cards, and you have to pick a card to play. And then when you play a card, you have to pay its cost. In this case, for example, for the Roman legions, you have to either pay 2 people resources, or you have to degrade a card. So that's the opposite of upgrading, right? So if I had a upgraded card, like a level 2 card in my hand, I could degrade it to pay the cost, okay, instead of paying the 2 people. And then you carry out the action. So in that case, if I were to do what I just showed you, I could conquer 1, and the cost to conquer a location, a region, is what you see there, all right? So I could conquer that, all right? Now, there's many uses for conquering regions, okay? You can abandon regions, much like in Imperium, okay? It has its, there's uses for abandoning regions. You can abandon a region to advance your civilization, okay, to another state, all right, like a republic, and then empire, and finally theocracy, okay. And a couple of these will ask you to abandon regions, all right. Some of them ask you to abandon a certain number of well, it has to add up to that much wealth. So I could abandon like this one, for example, has 4 wealth if I upgrade it to that amount, and then I could abandon just this, or I could abandon 3 different regions that add up to that much. All right. So you're gonna be needing to conquer regions in order to advance. So that's what the use of the people resource is. Now there's also materials, and that's used for upgrading cards, okay, or developing cards, right? So for example, you have this one where it requires you to discard a card and pay 1 material in order to develop a card. And every time you develop, you just do this, and then eventually you get to this. And that'll change these icons and it'll change the icons that are shown on the card and how they score at the end, and their actions will be improved. And some cards will also get their resources double, which will increase the efficiency with how many resources you can store. There is a limit of storing 4 resources, okay? Now, at the end of your turn, you're going to have to discard a card, which goes at the bottom, okay? And then refill your hand to 5. And there is a limited amount of rounds that you're going to have in order to accomplish the highest score possible. So there's a total of 3 ages. Each age has 4 rounds, which adds up to a total of 12 rounds, okay? And as you advance the ages, the Lux edition comes with this handy age tracker, okay? And also, when you develop your civilization card to a blue state, okay, kind of like in Imperium, where you go from a barbarian state to an empire state, okay, you're gonna be able to use certain cards, right? So you're gonna have now a blue banner, and this will be important because certain cards can only be used when you have a blue state, okay? And same goes for certain regions, right? Certain regions can only be conquered if you are in a red state, all right? So it shares that similarity to Imperium, right? It really borrows a lot of things from it, which is very interesting. And same thing with the scoring at the end. The scoring at the end is pretty involved, and there is a very handy app that you can use, okay, to score, because it can get pretty involved. There's tons of individual scoring conditions, and then there's tons of icons that you have to keep track of. There's also unrest icons, just like in Imperium, and you have to keep those in check. You can counter the amount of unrest that your civilization has at the end by trying to acquire as much prosperity as possible. So if you have more prosperity than rest at the end, you're good to go. But if you have more unrest, you get a -2 points for each unrest icon that isn't checked against a prosperity icon, okay? So pretty involved scoring and pretty involved turns. Every card has very interesting effects that you're gonna use to try to conquer as many regions as possible, develop as many cards as possible, and also you have to adjust to the rival civilization, because the rival civilization, of course, doesn't have its own deck, but depending on the final state of your deck, it'll score a certain way, right? So it'll kind of deter you from doing certain things, or kind of give you a certain direction of how you should evolve your or develop your deck. So, for example, against the Carthaginians, you probably want to control as much region wealth at the end of the game, okay? Because it'll subtract from their score. As long as you score just at least 1 point more than them, you're good. But yeah, against them, you subtract from their score based on that formula against how much wealth total you have from your regions, okay? So that's in your best interest to push your deck in certain directions based on what civilization you are going up against, okay? And there's 4 rival civilizations included in the game. All right, so now I want to get into what I liked about the game. So I didn't think that it was possible to pack even more depth into an 18 card deck, but this game pulls it off. And honestly, it's not really all that much more complicated than Dragons of Etchinstone. It's just slightly more involved, but a lot of the crunchiness comes from the way that the cards themselves are designed. There's just so many different effects that come from cards, and cards can be evolved into different states and have different scoring conditions at the end. One of the uncanniest things about this is the scoring at the end. It really feels like scoring at the end of Imperium, with all of the little things that you have to look at, like the icons, the scoring conditions, the unrest, and then scoring against the civilization. Now, this can also be a negative a bit at the same time because of how involved it is. I scored the first couple of times without the PMP Buddy website app, and this is a godsend. Okay, I highly suggest that you use it when scoring, because it will cut the amount of time you spend scoring, significantly. It's like a fraction of the time. Okay, it'll take you like no time to score. There's just so many little things that will matter at the end, and it will warrant some developing your deck accordingly, right? So very cool and interesting scoring. But yeah, the turn-to-turn gameplay here is just magnificent. I just really love the turn-to-turn gameplay of choosing what card to play and trying to get the best effect possible, and developing my civilization and conquering as much as possible every time I go through the deck. It really gave me an Imperium vibe that was pretty uncanny. Now, I'll say this, it's not as close as Dragons of Etchinstone reminded me of Mage Knight, but this still gave me a vibe based on its inspiration, which is Imperium. And it's just incredibly impressive, man. This is just one of the crunchiest games that you can buy based on its form factor. Obviously, that spot was held by Dragons of Etchinstone until now. But yeah, when it comes to depth and complexity ratio to the form factor, nothing beats this yet. Now, do I prefer it over Dragons of Etchinstone? Well, we'll talk about that. And there's very cool synergies that you'll discover as you get familiarized with the deck. It will definitely take you multiple playthroughs to get familiarized with this deck, and playthroughs last from an hour to hour and a half, depending on how familiarized you are with the rules. And I also want to add that the rulebook, which is split in a rulebook A and rulebook B, I found it really, really well done. Okay, you're gonna learn this in no time. And I also really like the aesthetics of the game. This type of illustration really fits the game pretty well. Compared to Dragons of Etchinstone, which I mentioned, I wish the art was a bit grittier, considering that that's a bit of a dungeon crawler of sorts. This art style is very, very fitting for this. So no complaints at all about the art, and I actually really enjoy the depictions of historical figures and locations here, and the graphic design and layout of the cards is fantastic. And now I want to get into a couple of negatives. So, unfortunately, because this game is more complex than Dragons of Etchinstone, the system is not as clean as that one. So, it's a bit more prone to edge cases, which I've run into. And if you go on Board Game Geek, there's a couple other edge cases. Not too bad, okay? But with Dragons of Etchinstone, it's such a clean system that I never had any, I never really had any questions that I can remember, okay? It was just excellent. I never had to look up anything, and I played it a ton, and I never ran into anything, any kind of doubtful situations. Okay, but here, yeah, it's a bit more murky because there's this thing where you can interrupt actions. Okay, and you can run into a couple more scenarios there that might not be 100% crystal clear. All right, so yeah, this system is is not as clean as Dragons of Etchinstone, and you might run into a couple more rules questions that you might expect from his previous installment. Okay, Now, another potential negative is the scoring. Okay, if you don't use the app, the scoring can get very involved. There's just so much to track of. Okay, there's just so many icons. So, prepare to have a calculator and prepare to have, a sheet where I suggest that you write down the amount of icons, because if you want to just use a calculator itself, depending on how good your memory is, I wouldn't rely on that. You're gonna probably need a pen and paper or something to write down the amount of types of icons that you're gonna see. So it can get pretty involved, and for better or worse, compared to its inspiration, which is one of the complaints that I had about Imperium, but it's one of its signature elements. So I do respect that he faithfully adapted that element of it, and it does make the game more interesting for sure. It's just a bit time consuming, so it's not my favorite part, the scoring at the end. The app does help that though, but I know that some people have contention with any kind of digital element being added to a board game. And finally, the biggest issue I have with this game is with the difficulty. Okay, so when I played, I played a ton of Dragons of Etchinstone, and to me, in normal difficulty with no changes, it felt like normal, right? Here, I played against a couple different civilizations, and I tried multiple times to play against both. The first time you're gonna, get destroyed. Pretty much guarantee you, unless you break a rule, you're gonna get destroyed. Okay. Now there is a mode of the game where you can play without. You can play without playing against a civilization. Just score the highest score possible, and I do suggest that. I do suggest that you play the game like that the first couple times, because you are gonna need to get familiar with the deck. But what makes the game interesting is the parameters that the civilization, the rival civs give you. Okay, because if you don't have any direction and you just try to score really high, that's okay, but that's not where a lot of the meat of the game comes from. I think a lot of the meat of the game comes from looking at how your rival civ's gonna score at the end and trying to circumvent that, right? But this is the first couples of saves based on the card layout. This is the first one that's presented to you, and this is the second one. And both times I played against them, I was just absolutely destroyed. And I even the first couple of times, obviously that can happen, but then I tried to adapt to what I thought would circumvent these conditions, but in a couple of cases I actually scored worse, and then in a couple other cases I just I meagerly scored a bit better than before, but I still got beaten. Okay, and this is normal. This just doesn't feel like normal. It just feels like hard. So I think moving forward, I would probably just consider easy or casual like normal. I don't think that I want to play without any changes, because I've tried. I mean, remember, you do have a limited number of rounds to develop your deck, so it can just get a little discouraging after playing multiple times. That I don't feel like I'm improving. You know what I'm saying? Even when I try to adapt to this rival safe scoring conditions. Now, obviously, that can get better with time, but all I'm saying is that the normal difficulty, it felt like much harder than that. Now, there's another thing that you can do, right? And you can use the scoring app to try to map out what your deck looks like, or should look like, if you want to beat the rival civ, right? So you can go and choose the Carthaginians as your rival civ, and no VP changes, and then you let's say that I evolve the deck completely, which is impossible, right? But let's assume, right? So you start there, you improve your deck all the way, and you control. Well, that's not a good idea. But let's say that you control these three regions, right? Okay, so yeah, and controlling the Levant and Constantinople at the end. So you calculate, and let's see, and you beat the bot there, right? And from there you can, start reducing as many as you can and see how far you can push to get closer to that score, right? And even with that, right? So I reduced the most of the deck, I reduced it to level 3, and look at that, like I'm just like 10 points away. But you're not, in most games you're not going to be able to evolve your deck that much, right? So it really just almost feels impossible in some scenarios, right? Like there was a point where I sat here for like 10 minutes trying to figure out combinations where trying to evolve the deck as little as develop the deck or conquer, what's the bare minimum I need to do to beat this, right? And there just wasn't a lot of flexibility, right? It's just very, very, you have to, there's like a very specific formula that you have to do, it feels like, in order to beat it. So yeah, I just wish that it was a bit more flexible and there was a bit more freedom with how you can develop your deck in order to beat the civilization. Okay, it just feels a bit too focused in that. Okay. But that doesn't take away from the amazing turn-to-turn gameplay and the crunchy decisions and going through your deck. That's all still amazing. I just wish that it was a bit more satisfying at the end, after going through the trouble of scoring that, just finding time after time. I still haven't beaten any civilization. I've tried, but like I still have not beaten it. I have not been, I've been, the closest I've been is like 10 points away from either Civ, and it's just not close. But yeah, so with that said, now do I prefer this over Dragons of Etchinstone? I would have, if it had not been for the difficulty thing, and also the fact that these games take a bit longer. They take like an hour and a half. For me, this would top Dragons of Etchinstone, as crazy as that sounds, because you know how much I gush about that game. I absolutely love Dragons of Etchinstone, but this kind of has its own niche where it's a bit more crunchy and more involved. So if you have like an hour to kill, you can sit down and just focus and just go through the deck, and it's gonna be just super thinky and crunchy and just fantastic. Okay. But yeah, the fact that it lasts an hour and the fact that it's not as easy to play ergonomics wise, because you're gonna have to be rotating cards like this, right, for storing resources. That adds an element that in Dragons of Etchinstone you don't have to deal with this, so it makes it a bit less fiddly, right? So yeah, there's like pros and cons for either, but right now I have to give the edge to Dragons of Etchinstone just because the system's cleaner, it's less fiddly, the difficulty I think it's more on point. But man, like I was still just super impressed with this game, and I'll keep playing it. And depending on when I go on a trip or if I want to take a game with me, I'll have to consider how long my breaks will be. Like for a flight, this is like a dream game for an airplane flight. Like this is just a lot. It really feels like a full-fledged board game, but just packed into an 18 card deck. Like Dragons of Etchinstone is a bit lighter, so it's like a more quick action ride. But this one just feels like a full-fledged thinky Euro deck builder board game in an 18 card form. So if you're gonna have an airplane flight, this is just one of the best titles that you can take with you. All right. And by the way, I almost forgot to mention that, the game is pretty easy to save, right? You have these game save cards where you can, you can keep track of what resource was stored, how many cards you had in your hand. So there were a couple scenarios where I put this game away and came back to it later, and I used the stored cards, the storage cards, and they worked out fantastic. Okay, so yeah, saving this game is a piece of cake if you want to pause it between settings or whatever. But yeah, for now, I will give the edge to Dragons of Etchinstone, but yeah, at the end of the day, there's to me, based on all the in-hand games I've played, there's no game with higher crunchiness and complexity ratio to its minimal component size. Okay, this is just a marvel. I don't know how he does it. I think that Joe needs to have like his head preserved, like Futurama style, so he can keep making these games for centuries to come, because this is incredible. How does he do it? Like how do you capture something like Imperium of all things into an 18 card game? It's crazy. And now I want to discuss how I store the game and how I sleeved it. Okay, so for sleeving, which is the closest thing to making the cards feel like they're made of plastic, and to not add any extra length and height around the cards, right? I use KMC Perfect Fit. Now, because these are Game Crafter cards, their size is slightly irregular, so sometimes I have to skip certain sleeves until I find one that's slightly wider. Okay, and sometimes I even have to try to stretch it a bit to make it fit, or flush a bit better into the card. Okay. But yeah, KMC Perfect Fits, just a bit of trial and error. You might have to skip a few sleeves when doing that. But yeah, as you can see, it's like exactly the fit of the card, which is amazing, right? And yeah, so you got your deck, you got your region. Oh, and yeah, when I play, right, you can play on a table, like I said, and put your regions here, your civ here, your age card here, and then your hand of cards here. It works out great. So love that I can play this on a table. Fine. When I rotate resources, I just keep it in my hand like this. So works out great. Now for the rival civ, I did the same thing I did for Dragons of Etchinstone. I just cut a sleeve in half, right? I don't need to look at the bottom civ. And then for the age card, I have this blue and red sleeve for the state of my civ, and for keeping track of the age where my civ is at. And you're always going to start in red and age 1 like that. Okay. And you got your saving resource cards. And by the way, I saw this method where you can use these if you don't want to rotate resources. You can put resources that are rotated on the table and use this card. There's someone on BGG who did that. Yeah, that works too. I added a bit of red color on the side so that I could tell them easier. Okay, just use a little Sharpie. But if you decide to go that route, right? If you want to spot your stored resources easier, just adding a bit of red there on the side helps with the sleeved card. But ultimately, what I use to store it, okay, because obviously if you store it, it won't fit back in the deluxe box, unfortunately. I have one of these, right? And there it is, okay, which I'll link in the description if you want. You can buy this in bulk. I use them for storing, many things, from tokens to in-hand games like this and PNPs. So yeah, as long as you don't sleeve it with a sleeve that's too tall, it has to be like a short type sleeve, like it'll fit back in there, all right? But yeah, folks, I want to thank you so much for watching. If you have any comments, questions, feedback, go ahead and put them in the comment section. And if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.